Hello, I'm Hugh. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk a bit about design theory, and just to start off I want to have a bit of a talk about why design is important, why it matters, particularly print design, which is an area as a lecturer in print design and also a former print journalist I'm very interested in. I think a lot of people still like to read the printed word. They endow it with a lot of trust. For a lot of Namibians, despite all the internet and everything, I think that people are not sure about something until they've seen it in print. They don't feel sure about it. I think also that a lot of internet-based media, especially news media, took their cues from how the print media do design when it came to website design. They took a lot of cues from established protocols from newspaper design and media design. A lot of students who are maybe word people, who are, text people, will say, well, I don't get it, why don't we just put everything, just put the words on a page, anyhow it will do. People will want to read it. And I'd say that kind of approach really ignores the way that people actually look at the media. People don't read it from cover to cover as they would a novel, for example. And even novels, I'd say people don't always do that, but that's another discussion. People skim through. They probably go to what they see as the most interesting first. They don't read every story. They'll skip some stories entirely. Some they'll just read a few paragraphs to get the overall gist. Some they'll just probably read the headline, so at least they know what's happening. And some that they're interested in, they'll pore over and read again and again. Once again, some pictures they'll just glance at. It's even more a subconscious thing. Other pictures they'll look at and even stare at and remark on and, talk to their friends about what this picture means. So because of that, print news media design has really evolved to guide people through a page and through a publication, to say that these here are the most salient facts. These are what you absolutely have to know, for example. These are less important. This is ancillary information. This is secondary information, if you like. And then maybe say that, even to indicate that this is something fun over here, this is light-hearted, whereas this is very serious. So, for example, a war news report would probably not be on a pink page with flowers and unicorns, to make a stupid example. At the same time, for example, and this has also changed, so kids... pages aimed at kids might have, for example, easier to read fonts. They might be more brightly colored. This has changed a bit because generally there's a feeling in children's media these days you don't talk down to kids. So you do make things easier to read, both in terms of text and also in terms of things like fonts, in terms of use of pictures and maybe diagrams, charts, infographics, that kind of thing. But you don't talk down to kids. It's from the broadcast media, but a good example of news that doesn't talk down to kids might be the BBC program News Round, which still treats kids as people who understand that there are things going on in the world that, might be difficult to understand, might not be good, and so on. That's a digression. So, some of the ways that design... So, the function of print media design is to guide people through a page. show you on the page what do you read first, what's the most important, what's vital, what's less important, what's secondary, what's for everyone, what's for kids, what's aimed at primarily women or primarily men or primarily children, for example. All these are cues contained in design. In this way, media design is a form of communication. It's no less important than communication through photographs or through text or through audio-visual media. Design is communication. Very, very important concept. Whenever you're working on a media design, you're as much a communicator as the writer or a photographer or a cartoonist or anyone else. So some of the ways in which design does this, one of the most obvious is through the use of fonts. We all know that the most important story on the page will get the biggest, boldest headline. Maybe some newspapers, like the Namibian, especially like to use color headlines to suggest that this is the most urgent and important story. Also often, for example, a different font is used for photo captions. So you easily see that this text relates to the photo above it and not the story below. Another example is use of columns. So almost every print publication has a standard number of columns per page. That might be 5 generally, sometimes 3, maybe as many as 7, but they'll also alter it. So for example, the lead sentence of a story, which for a news story should capture the essence of that story, that lead sentence might go over 2 or even 3 columns to differentiate it from the rest of the story that you can read later. Another way that design works is not just to guide you through a single page, but to guide you through the publication. So you'll see that generally in a news publication there'll be different sections, and stories and pictures will be grouped together. Design will do that in various ways, maybe through the use of labels. This is opinion. Maybe also you'll see that, for example, the sports page is designed in a different way from the opinion page. Opinion pages are very text-based. There's a lot of text. It's for reading in depth, and the design of the page, the layout of the page will definitely reflect that. As for sports, it's about action. Sports are about spectatorship to a large extent. It's about what you can see. So there will be more use of pictures, there'll be bigger pictures, there may be more use of infographics and that kind of thing. An exception to that, of course, would be the use of editorial cartoons to try and break up the text on the editorial pages, also make the pages a bit attractive to the eye. Another important function of design is to make the medium easy on the eye, so that one doesn't have to really scan through a whole block of text. You try and break up those blocks of texts with various things. Also to guide the reader's understanding. So you could break up a very long block of text which looks very heavy and intimidating. You try and break it up maybe with pull quotes. So a pull quote would be a quote that's just taken out of the story and just put in bigger text across several columns, maybe with quotation marks, big quotation marks on either side, just to help the reader also capture the essence of the story and for the reader not to be intimidated. There are so many ways in which this is done. Another way would be the use of color, for example. Use of different shadings behind text to maybe indicate that this is a different story from this one. This one's a fact box here, which is has a different shading of kind of paper behind the text. and that would serve to separate the fact box about the story from the main story. There are actually so many, and more of them are coming in all the time. More and more devices that designers use to help people understand the story. It's becoming very common these days, for example, for links, or let's not call them links, but for example, logos of various social media sites and internet sites, where you can, for example, you'll have the story, and then at the end of the story you'll have the Twitter logo, and go to this address on Twitter for more information, and you have something that even looks like a web link, looks like a hyperlink, though of course it's not clickable. So you have these print media influenced the design of web pages, but what you're seeing increasingly, even through the use of things like fonts like Calibri, for example, that were designed to be read on the screen mainly, are being used more in print, and things like using the Twitter logo and something that looks like a hyperlink. Through that way, internet design and web page design is now re-influencing the design of print media, which I think is very interesting. So this was my introduction to design, why design is important, why design and layout matters immensely in print media, maybe almost as much as the stories themselves, some would say more. In the second part of this lecture, we're going to look a bit at some of the Namibian media today and how design may have played a role in the meanings they're trying to convey. Thank you very much.